I had no idea that there was a specific method and a spiritual mechanism behind anything we do on this earth, such as creating a business, generating a group, and projects, etc., etc. But during the last years, my eyes have been opened to Bible truths and connections that I'd never seen before. So today I'm going to take a look at the secret science behind building businesses and organizations and how the spiritual reality of it looks like. Now, before we get into the meat of it, I need to lay the ground a little bit. And we know that in the Bible, it talks a lot about different altars. In the Old Testament, we see it all the time. The Israelites and, the kings, etc. back then, they were building altars all the time. And sometimes it was for their God, Yahweh, the God of the Israelites. And that was bringing them a lot of favor and blessings and good stuff, protection, etc. But quite often they also built altars to other gods, and that would lead them into captivity, wars, famine, illness, and so much devastating destruction because they were not following the God that was there to bless them and protect them. They had been told what to do, but they didn't do it. And so the consequence was that protection and favor was lost. And it seems as if they kept forgetting these things because the consequence wasn't imminent. It didn't happen right away. And this was going on over generations. So one generation saw the miracles and they learned that, wow, we really need to take this God serious and never ever do certain things. But then later on, a generation or two, they've forgotten about that. And then they get influenced by the world and they start doing the things that they shouldn't do because they didn't pay attention to the advice of their forefathers, etc. Now that is something that I think a lot of us can relate to because we do stuff in our life and we forget about what we should do and maybe we don't see it clearly enough and then something bad happens but we don't see the connection even if it is quite instant. Because it usually operates in two different realms that in the eyes of a human being, the mundane realm does not seem to be related. And so you can see that this is a pattern that is still going on, and it is so important for us to understand this in order for us to be able to understand how we can co-create with God in a way that is not bringing sin into this world or, destruction and the negative things that we don't want. Because you see, building and doing something in the name of God is not the same as doing it with God. Because we can do all kinds of stuff and say it is for God or, this is God. And they did back in the day when they were crusaders. They did the most horrific things and they so-called did it for God. But the question we need to ask is, was God really in it? And it is the same for us. We want to do good, but is God really in it? Using the name God, Christ, Jesus, whatever you want to use, is not a guarantee that He is actually there. I'm Eden. I make videos about the path with God, our life purpose here on earth, and the abundant life that God wants us to have. Now, if you like that kind of stuff, then make sure to subscribe so that you can see more of my content. Most people just create and build businesses. They gather people and build these groups or organizations or churches and whatever they do, and they're just doing it based on inspiration and step by step, 1 foot here and 1 step there, and it ends up the way that it is. Now they may have a plan, but usually it is their own plan, and sometimes they get specific direction from God and other times it's more fluid, more subtle and vague. But at the core of it, if we could see with the spiritual eyes and see what is going on behind the veil, we would actually be able to see specific contracts and specific dynamics and mechanisms in place. And if you are aware of those mechanisms and the methods or the procedures that are involved, the likeliness of you being able to create something together with God that is blessed with more accuracy or even faster is so much greater. And the chance of you messing up and actually serving the enemy instead is so much more decreased. So I've mentioned altars, but honestly, what is an altar? It's like this thing that you build out of wood or stone or whatever. Yeah, we know that, but what is the purpose? What is really going on an altar? As I see it, based on what I've learned, is that it is an exchange point between the spiritual and the physical, where an agreement or contract can kind of like be signed or sealed, typically through an offering or whatever is going on there. And through that, access is given. And that access is usually both ways. So, for example, if we have an altar to the real God, we can see this in the Old Testament. They built an altar and they sacrificed stuff. Today we sacrifice our obedience, our soul, our heart, and through that we get access to Christ, who comes and wants to live with us. And it is a good exchange. It is a blessing. It is good. It is lifting us up. But in the old days, they also had other altars, as you know, and they could sacrifice to the god of this and that to have fertility or to get money or whatever they were looking for. And they wanted just, the fruits and the juicy stuff without following the rules, which is pretty much what people are doing today as well. They want the gifts, they want the fruits, but they don't want to pay the real price. So they cut corners and engage with the wrong kind of spirits on the wrong kind of terms to get the result without it being blessed. And there is a catch to it. So whenever you have this kind of exchange with a spirit that is not the living God of the Israelites, then they, the spiritual forces will get access to something in your life, and they will steal, destroy, kill, and, bring devastation, while you may be getting some kind of candy. I like to call it that because it's not healthy for you, but it tastes sweet in the moment. And so through this exchange, you are being broken down and taken further away from God and the good life that you could have had and should have, instead of getting closer to God and the everlasting blessings that He is given. Now, if you are interested in building a group, a business, an organization, a church, or whatever, then maybe you are looking to fulfill your life purpose. And if that is the case, I have created a mini course that is absolutely for free. You can find the link below, so check it out if that is interesting for you. And so on the altar, there is like a contract that is signed or sealed, as I said. And a contract indicates that there is some type of, specific purpose. And you give me a goat and I give you fame, for example. Or you give me your heart and I give you salvation. That's the good version. So there is something that is specific, that is described or exchanged as a promise inside of that contract. And a promise like that is like heaven. If you look up, we see the heavens. And when we are engaging with the God of the Israelites, it is the real heaven that is our promise, the real fruits and the real good things, the real deal. But when there is an altar that is not the living God of the Israelites, but some kind of basically demon or Satan himself, then it is a false promise there. It looks good. Adam and Eve in Eden with the snake, and there was a promise, but it wasn't leading to something good. It was just something that was tempting. It was a fake promise. And that's what I see like a fake heaven. You have this altar with the wrong kind of force, spiritual force, and there is like a heaven or a promise that is not giving you the everlasting life or the good fruits that you are truly looking for. But it is like an artificially fake heaven that is blocking your view to the real stuff. Now, in order for you to see through these things and get to the real stuff, you actually have to see through the false promise. If you understand that candy is not good for you, well, then you will not be as tempted because you get to see the negative consequences, the decay in your teeth, the body that is deteriorating, all the stuff that is going on. I'm not saying that it's so terrible to eat candy, but you get the analogy, right? And when you see through the promise, then it is so much easier to expose the force behind it and go for the real thing instead. So the question is, what does all of this have to do with altars in our time and contracts and business and organizations and all of that? Well, I will tell you. About a year ago, I had a dream about groups and contracts and how any sort of group and, gathering of people, something that was like an attraction, had a contract with a spiritual force at the core of it. So that means anything that is gathering attraction or attention in this world has a spiritual contract at the core. And if you could have spiritual glasses and look around and see and read what the contract actually said, that would be a very, very interesting moment. It could be terrifying at times, and it could be really, really surprising in a good way at other times. Now, I've already created a video about that dream, but that was back when I was actually making ASMR videos, so the video is a little bit weird. Perhaps I will make a new video about it and I will link it if I do. But basically, the essence of it was that any group, anything that you build that attracts people and that is, accumulating some kind of attention and momentum has a spiritual contract with a spiritual force at the core of it. And that means there is an altar. There is an exchange. And the question is, what kind of exchange is going on? What force is involved? What do that force get access to, including the group members that are brought into it? And what is given back to the group members? What is, the give and take in this contract? Now, the one that is starting the business or the group, well, they have their own responsibility and views, etc. And maybe they know exactly what this is about, but not necessarily, because the Bible tells us that in our heart we have intentions that we don't even know ourselves. Only God truly knows the intentions of our heart, and that is where you get to the juice that is determining the spiritual force and the true purpose of whatever you are building. So I am getting ahead of myself. Through that, you should know that it is through cleansing your heart and your intentions and being very strict on that, that you are able to access the right kind of contract with God that is in truth and in spirit for good. So if that is your intention, then truly, honestly, you need to pay attention to your heart's intention and ask God to show you what it is, what needs to be changed. The seed at the core needs to be cleansed before it starts sprouting and multiplying. Otherwise, you will be multiplying the dirt and the ugliness that is in there. Nevertheless, once a contract is in place, it is sealed and it is set in motion, then there is a magnet that will attract people, and the people that come will have similarities to the intention and to the purpose of this contract, and they will naturally be attracted to it. Think of it this way. If I am in a marketplace and I am selling melons, somebody next to me is selling lemons, and the one next to me on the other side is selling cucumbers. Now, depending on what you like, you come to the booths and you buy what you like. And so it is with these contracts and the groups and the spiritual force that is gaining access to something and giving something. You are attracted to it naturally based on your preferences. So I hope you can see that at the core of everything we do, whether it's business or it's a project, an organization, or just a group, there is something going on at the core, at the spiritual level. And if you pay attention to that, if you pray to God and even go into it very specifically, very consciously asking God, I want to do this. Can you help me form it based on your will? Is there anything I need to cleanse out before it goes like this and that, or before I do so and so? Well, then you can consciously work on the elements that are needed for you to build something that is truly blessed. Now, if you like this video, then you may also be interested in the videos that I put on the screen now. So check it out if it's interesting for you. And with that, I just want to say take care, be blessed, and hope to see you soon again.